Anybody have any particular interest about this topic, first of all? Anything that you were hoping to learn about today?
How to eat better.
How to eat better. Okay, great. And I'm going to give you some idea, like I hope that you come away with some idea of the rationale for eating with the season rather than any particular recipe. So that's what I'll be talking about. I know sometimes we give recipes and these talks, and I think that's really good to do for other seasons, and this fall, the season's a little bit different. So here's a quote from one of the old 2,000-year-old texts that we have in Chinese medicine. The wise and good human beings of the past who were able to preserve their health had mastered the ways of nourishing life. So that means being in balance with heaven and earth, the position of the sun, the moon, yin and yang, and also the 4 seasons. So since food grows in accordance with all of these things, we're talking about food in the season. And I just want to point out that some of the major books in Chinese medicine came out of, were really endorsed and came out of major philosophies in China also. They're very grounded and long-standing. And also the food is about quality of food. So I know sometimes people talk about quantity of food specifically when we're talking about diet and food, and calories. It's all more quantities. And we're talking about quality, how does the food taste, and we'll be going over some of the other things also. And also it's very personal. It depends on you, and everybody is very unique. So what I'm saying is not a diet for everybody, but it's things that you can apply. So I just want to review from my last talk. I talked about the moon, and so that's about cycles. And the fall season is part of a cycle of the year. And then there's a fall season in everything. There's a fall season and the cycle of the moon. When the moon is going more towards the new moon, we're getting less light in the sky at night. So that's sort of the fall season of the moon. In somebody's lifetime, the fall season is more towards older age and going inward and being quieter. And you can even see there's a little harvest picture here, just to the side of the middle toward the older woman. So did you know that fall actually started in Chinese medicine in August? And I think here in Oregon we have a particular sort of luck, because in August things get very dry and sometimes leaves start falling off. So even though it's very warm, we have some signs of what fall is like. It's not quite like this picture yet. We have kind of a long fall. If we take our idea of fall in the West and we combine it with Chinese fall, this picture was taken in November. But actually, November 7th is the first day of winter in Chinese calendar. So it will already be counted as winter then. And we have a holiday coming up in the Chinese calendar on September 30th, which is the middle of the fall holiday. And it coincides with the full moon every year in the lunar calendar. And people celebrate that as a harvest time. And like I was saying about the cycles, when you're eating for the fall, you're also eating for the spring. You want to think about how you want to feel 6 months from now. You want to be able to feel like you're a flower coming up and you have energy and you're ready to go and you're bright. So the foods that are good to eat now will nourish you now, but also in time to come, through the winter, through the spring. And that first quote that I had in this talk from the Yellow Emperor's book, that book talks a lot about how people when they cure a disease in one season, then they're going to be better the next. But if they don't cure a disease in one season, then they will remain sick. And it talks about every season what happens if you don't cure it. And some of it, you know, it's a 2,000-year-old book, so you take that literally. But we know, many of us probably know what it's like to have, you know, to be sick and then feel like, oh, I'm still being affected by that. It takes a while to get better. So the basic theory in Chinese medicine, very complicated, but it's also very basic. It's just two parts, yin and yang. And everything has yin and yang aspects, but keep in mind that it's also relative. So I have the yang up higher in the picture and the yin part down lower in the picture. Most things are a combination of both, and they have pieces of both. And I like putting this landscape behind it because things that have qualities of yang and qualities of yin will combine in the middle where we know we live on the earth. So we're a combination of that too, and all our food is a combination of both of those qualities. And some things have more of those qualities, some things have more yang, some food is more light, some food is more spicy, moving, warm, and some food is more cool. And anybody have an idea of what you would say, like winter and summer are the bigger extremes? Where would you put winter in this yin and yang? Would it be more yin or more yang?
More yin.
More yin. And how about summer?
More yang.
Yes. How about fall?
Combination.
Right, exactly. It's a combination. And so since it's a combination, it's more complicated. It's really kind of hard on our bodies. Some days are warmer, some days are cooler, some days rainy, some days not, some days dry. So luckily I'll be talking about some food for that. This is another illustration of the more extremes. And here's just a list of some random foods that fit into these categories of being more yang, more yin. Let's see. I mean, there's some things that seem like obvious, more obvious things that are mixtures to me. For example, like a tomato is red, but it's very, very wet, and so it has a cooling property, so it's very yin. But the red color, as you think that it's more more warm, but it's placed over here in the more yin category. So if you're seeing a list like this for the first time, don't be too daunted. People have to place these foods this way, but they can be placed in a more refined way in other lists. And also on this landscape, I wanted to start to show you some of the other ways that things are categorized in Chinese medicine. So over here, we still have the more yang, the more yin, and they combine to give you good, healthy qi for yourself. And then we have a 5-phase or a 5-nature way of categorizing everything in the world in Chinese medicine. So the red is correlated more with fire, and that's more yang, more up in the picture. In the fall and spring are over here in the middle, just like we were saying. They're not either extreme. So for the more like textbook picture, this is just the words that we use for those five elements or 5 phases, 5 qualities. And technically, this is the fall season down here. So correlates with metal. So we look at all those 5, and instead we put them in something more like 4 seasons, then Instead of keeping the colors the same, this is more like summer, winter, very bright, dark, and over here is the metal. And in some parts of the world, the white is used when people go to funerals, not black. So I hope it's not too confusing. It's not the thing light, bright, yin. It's actually the metal and the time of sadness and the lung. And in the middle is the earth. And sometimes the earth isn't given a specific place because you need earth. All your food goes into your stomach, so you need that place, that center for your body. And the earth then can support all of the other seasons. So that's why in Chinese medicine, the first medicine, before you take herbs, before you get acupuncture, anything, is actually just eating right. Eating the way that best supports your whole body because of this central place. And if you correlate all of those with organs in the body, these are Chinese medicine organ names, so they're not actually like your literal of any of these, but close. When you eat your food, it gets processed by the stomach and the spleen in Chinese medicine, all right in the middle of your body. So the lung is the organ that's most active in the fall time. So the lung has some functions that are very important right now. Welcome. And could they get some handouts? So first of all, one very basic thing that the lung does, which I'm sure we all are thinking about and not thinking about at the same exact time, because I brought it up, is breathing and just getting vital energy into your body. So if you can't breathe, you really can't live. So some of the aspects of that breathing, just basic breathing, are that when you do that, you're able to regulate how water moves in the body. Just think of like when you take a full breath, that things are moving through your whole body. You breathe in through your nose. The outside of your body is in touch with the air, so the body hair also relates to the lung. And you're able to have protection from the surroundings because of that aspect of being in contact with the surroundings. But it all is reliant on the lung operating in a healthy way for you. Another thing that the lung does that is very important is processing grief. So in Chinese medicine, no emotion should last too long because otherwise it's said to be stuck and it doesn't move. So the lung's a big job. Grief is a big emotion. And so sometimes it gets stuck, like any emotion. And so it's overwhelmed, and then you have trouble moving on from there. And then you might have lung problems after that. That's why the sound of the lung is like the sound of crying. And every organ in Chinese medicine is correlated with colors and sounds. It's all very multisensory. So it sounds like crying. It's the color white. It has a flavor of pungentness, of like think of very spicy food. And it prefers moisture in moderation because think when you cry, so much water is moving in your face. And that's moving away from the lung. It's moving up and out. And so the lung wants to be wet, but not too wet. You should cry sometimes, but not a lot. You should get moisture from your food, but not too much. Otherwise it's overwhelmed. Anybody have any questions? The lung is very delicate. It's said to be a delicate organ in Chinese medicine. It has, a very central role because if you can't breathe, then you can't live. But at the same time, it's, like I said, in contact with your surroundings. It receives food. It receives water, steam from your food, but it can't get too much. It processes grief, but it can be overwhelmed. It interfaces with the environment, but it can be overwhelmed. You can get sick. And it's also up there in your chest next to your heart. And the heart is the emperor in Chinese medicine. So imagine standing next to the leader all the time. You have to be strong, but you have to be only relative to that most strong thing. That nothing goes higher than the emperor. So it's a delicate role to be in. If you're confused, it's okay. So the lung comes in contact with some major pathogens in the fall season. Like I said, sometimes it's dry, sometimes it's very warm, it's getting cold, but also it's said to be a season when there's wind. The weather's changing and wind is blowing in different ways, and so all of these things affect the lung. And it can get in deeper layers to the body. So how do you know if you have a lung problem? How do you know what you're feeling correlates with the lung? If you're having low lung qi, low lung vital energy, then you may have shortness of breath, or you may get colds a lot, or you may feel low energy. If you're having trouble with the lung circulating, emotions, or circulating water in the body, you may get coughing, phlegm, sinus infection. Those are some common things. And then two other major things for the lung are to stay away from being sick and to overcome being sad and move that emotion. So here we get to the kind of packed chart.